Get ready to experience the pulse of the outdoor community as we dive into the stories of people's journeys into the outdoor world. Hello, welcome to the Outdoor Pulse. Just some quick updates before we dive into this interview today. I will be opening up a new page on my website that will be dedicated to nonprofits and charities that my guests either are a part of or support. And you guys will be able to go on there and go support those causes if you so please. So that's the big change on my website. And we have some really cool episodes coming up here in the future. So stay tuned and I will keep you guys up to date. Thank you, and let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Pulse. I am your host, Mitch Dean, and today we are having on Milosz Pierwola. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
Awesome.
Adventure
And
Milo is the
Adventure
brand
Milo
name
is
or the
his,
easy way to pronounce it.
and he was a lawyer in New York and decided one day that he wanted to enjoy life more and get out and explore and see the world. So we're going to jump into his story and kind of see how he got to where he is now. So how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I
Awesome.
do want to make the announcement that on January 24th this year, 2020, we opened doors to the first ever climbing and outdoor education school in the country of Iraq, in the country's history.
That's
I was able
awesome.
to create this project without any experience. I had never been to Iraq. I have no military experience either. And with a team of the first mountaineers in Iraq, we were able to bring this dream to fruition. But that's the end, right?
Yeah.
So if you're watching like a Quentin Tarantino movie, now
Yeah.
you're interested where this all came from.
Yeah.
I used to follow the rules of society. I used to expect and actually feel entitled that as long as I went to school and put my work in, I was able to earn the reward of a sustainable life and income, benefits, insurance, that kind of thing later. It didn't work out. I think our generation grew up in a world where we watched our parents be laid off from companies that they worked 15 over 20 years at. And our time is not valued. When I
Yeah.
entered the workforce in 2006, I discovered a world entering a recession. By 2008, forget it. Everybody knows what happened over there. I went to law school for that reason because, like I said, I graduated college and I couldn't find work. So I thought to myself, well, I guess more years of school wouldn't hurt, with the idea that I'm going to listen to my elders,
Yeah.
right? Because what do your parents tell you? They want you to have a good job in the future. And I think the three top jobs, at least from Europe, where I'm from, are, you either want to be an attorney, a doctor, or a priest. A priest no longer kind of holds, but the other two were good. My brothers went to medical school, and I had to be different. So I said, you know what? I'm going to invest these next years into law school because everybody's telling me if you become a lawyer, you are going to be respected by your community, you are going to have money, and you are going to have success and happiness as a result of that. Unfortunately, when I entered the workforce as an attorney, I discovered everything I hated about working to become an attorney in school, which was basically sitting at a desk for the majority of my day and reading really old English cases, was now going to be my future, except for I no longer had professors that gave me bad grades. I had bosses that had anger management problems and that got incredibly angry and basically made my life a living hell. So after several years of searching for myself, and I can tell you that I genuinely searched for myself
Yeah.
because I didn't become a lawyer and say, oh, I give up, I don't like this. I actually I worked with the Constitutional Court of South Africa, so I traveled to South Africa for that. I worked for the Royal Courts of Justice in London. That's in the UK for anybody that doesn't know that. But I worked for the Royal Courts of Justice in London. I also worked in New York City, in New Jersey, ultimately for a major firm in Manhattan. And I went searching. I went searching for happiness in this career that's supposed to have it. And at one point in my life, I realized I was working 95 hours per week. Let me break that down for you. 12 and a half hours Monday through Friday, and then 10 and a half hours on Saturday and 10 and a half hours on Sunday. No break, and then you jump
Brutal.
back into Monday and you start again. That was my work week. That happened for a year and a half. I was barely making enough money in order to pay off my loans. I had no health insurance. I had no job security, and I just had several different bosses who screamed at me and the other however many attorneys were working on the case with me. And I realized that I was living my nightmare, and this is kind of the way that everybody feels that I talk to right now, not just in America, but in many other places around the world. You feel like you're trapped in a position and you need to be there because you have to pay for things like for your loans, for your rent, for your insurance, for whatever else. And I couldn't believe it. In order to deal with this, I escaped through substances. I found myself doing incredibly dangerous things. Now, we're doing an outdoor podcast here, right?
Yeah.
As you could see, there's a lot of outdoor stuff over here. So I was not a person who went out on a big bender and just showed up on Monday completely hungover. That also happened. What I'm talking about is crazy things like being completely drunk and literally walking the edge of a skyscraper while looking up, or going to a bachelor party at Atlantic City, and there was like a big storm coming, and there was these giant like sewage pipes that went out into the ocean. And as we were driving by, I was like, wow, look at those waves crashing over those pipes. Well, not more than 2 hours later, I was literally walking out onto the end of those pipes with the waves crashing over in my dress shoes and suit. And I thought this was all perfectly normal, because the reality was I hated my life so much. There was no purpose to it, that when I thought about the next day, I just didn't care. I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want that evening to end because I was free of that place that I had to be imprisoned.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And the thing that I say to people is, there was this, like everybody says, aha moment, right? The closest thing that I have to that is I was at work. And as I mentioned before, I was working with a number of other attorneys, both men and women. But this particular day, I sat down next to a group of people. And when I looked down the line, I saw a guy first that was 5 years older than me, then 10 years older, then after that, like 20 years older, and after that, like a super old attorney. And I literally saw my future, man. I mean, as close as you could possibly get to it. I saw myself moving through what was going to come to me, because I already knew what the attorney life looked like. It meant you were going to be living in an office with a beautiful car and whatever, all that other jazz, but you're practically living in the office. And I saw that these people sitting next to me were literally me in the future. And I saw how the older I got, the more my hair would fall out of my head because I'm stressed out. I looked at my desk, and what I saw was sugar and caffeine, candy and Red Bull or coffee or whatever it was. And I noticed that the more that I would be working and staring at the screen in front of me, the more my head would droop. Luckily, though, my stomach was growing into a nice little pillow to catch me on my way down, right? And I realized that the more I looked at these people, the more I also saw that anger had eaten them up from inside. They were irritable, impatient, and intolerant. They just wanted to get the F out of there. And I looked at it and I was like, that's it. That's 100% what is going to be waiting for me in the future. And the longer I'm there, the more bitter I will become, and the more my life will have escaped from my hands. And through a series of insane events, I was able to get to the point where I cracked. Now, I think that I'm not any more exceptional than any other human being that I've met. In fact, I'm actually quite average, I think. But what I had done is I had put myself into such a high stress environment, I dug myself so deep into this hole, right? I almost made it out the other side, because the intensity with which I worked towards this dream that was talked about like a fantasy, like a fairy tale when I was younger, I snapped. Like reality didn't matter to me anymore. I effectively died, through my substance
Yeah.
abuse and through my actions, I was effectively suicidal. But what ended up happening is I literally it was almost like an audible snap in my brain, because what I realized was my life is over. Like I could see my future and my future sucks and I don't want to live it. It's that simple. If I get hit by a car, I didn't like when I was crossing streets in New York, I didn't even look both ways. I would just walk out, it was insane. And I realized that my life was effectively over. I was now trapped in the bed that I made, right? And the other thing that I realized is there was this thing that echoed in my head, this kind of like weird proverb that I heard, which was like, what's the best time to plant a tree? Mitch, what's the best time to plant a tree?
Best time to plant the tree is during the wet season.
Well, the,
I'd
the
say.
way the proverb goes, or what their saying goes, is the
I haven't
best
heard
time to
it.
plant the tree is 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
The
Oh,
second
yeah.
best time to
Yeah, I've
plant a
heard that
tree is
now.
today.
Forgot about that one.
And I realized that if I waited to accomplish my dreams, who knows where I would be in the future. But I thought if I started 10 years ago, if instead of going to law school and college, if I decided to go and train as a mountain guide, I would most likely already be on top of Mount Everest. What is the insane, like, how far could I be if I started in high school?
Yeah.
And it just seemed crazy to me to wait another day, man. Like I thought to myself, no, like if I start today, I was able to accomplish an impossible feat. I became an attorney in New York City, and I was a math major and an economics major. My grades were very, very average, lower than average. But yet I had gotten here. So the things that I did not want to do, I had achieved, right? So now think about this incredible dream that I have. Like, because ever since I was a kid, and this is where I got to kind of bring this in. When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I wanted to be Conan the Barbarian. I wanted to go to places that were undiscovered, alien worlds. I wanted to meet mystical creatures, and I wanted to be exploring. And whenever I expressed those intentions to adults, they were like, "Man, that's a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. Don't like stop thinking about that. Think practically, Milo. You know, think practically. What is going to be the job that's going to keep you happy and sustained and get you a family and all that?" And so I
What?
was like talked out of it, right? When I was a kid.
Yeah. What was the age? How old were you when that visible,
Oh, as
when that
far as I can
audible
remember.
snap?
Oh,
That
the
oh
snap.
yeah, the snap in your head.
So that was
When
29 years old.
29 years old.
29 years old, full academic debt. I took on loans for my entire schooling, both undergrad and law school. And I was nearing 30. So in my mind, like my time had passed, right?
Yeah.
So now here I was at 29 years old saying to myself, no, man, you got to start now. You got a lot of catching up to do, because there's athletes out there like Petzl athletes, Arc'teryx athletes, North Face athletes who are younger than you, who've already accomplished incredible things.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, this is insanity. If I wait one more day, I am actively destroying any opportunity for the future for me to achieve my dreams. And I thought to myself, what if I start today? What if I plant that tree today? Where will I be 10 years from now? Let me tell you, Mitch, it's been 10 years about. I
Yeah.
started in September 20th, 2012 is when I officially quit my job and started to pursue this full time. And I can tell you that within those 8 years, I have just achieved more than I could possibly have imagined. I did not have the capacity to imagine where I would go. In 2017, I filmed a virtual reality documentary up to Mount Everest Base Camp.
That's
I
awesome.
believe
Yeah.
I was the first person to ever do that. I started the first virtual reality humanitarian program out of New York City, where I allow people to put on virtual reality goggles, and using a cell phone, I filmed virtual reality content, and I was able to take paralyzed people who were unable to even lift themselves out of bed with their own strength. But with these goggles, they could feel like they're climbing an alpine mountain or crawling around in caves or flying in a drone or riding a bicycle or even something as simple as riding the subway.
Yeah.
And then I went to Romania and I started an orphanage. And then I went to Poland and I started a fundraising operation there. I started mentoring children across the world about what sort of opportunities lay in their future. And then I started my own nonprofit, which is Global Upgrade Incorporated. I did that last year, actually. And in each of these, I was brought to opportunities again I could never have imagined. I never realized that I was going to be the first person to ever start a climbing school in Iraq.
Yeah.
By the way, a country that our country started a war with, a country that our country is bombing actively. If you're a white guy in Iraq and speaking English, you're in danger, right? That's what we've been taught. We're not friendly with the nation, and yet here I am, somehow finding myself in the middle of all this. And the reality is the only thing that's changed is I started to accept responsibility for all of my mistakes. Because at one point somebody told me, Milo, you're crazy. First of all, my entire community abandoned me. My family abandoned me. My friends abandoned me. It was a horrible time in my life. Because when I quit being an attorney, everybody around me said, why would you do that? Everybody wants to be an attorney, especially in New York. You've got it, Milo. You have what we want, man. Congratulations. But they were going by what they thought an attorney life was like.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize the challenges and the things that have been taken away from us through like this generation.
Behind closed doors, they don't know
Exactly.
what's going on. Exactly. They've not lived
So
the
when they
life.
saw
Yeah.
somebody that spent 21 years in school in order to build a career in one of the most hardest places to build a career in the world, they thought, here, Milo made it. And now, for some reason, he is literally throwing away all of that investment, and he's putting on a backpack and he's going outside and doing something that people without a high school diploma can do. What a nutcase. Don't talk to my kids. Don't even talk to me. I don't even want to hear about this because you're crazy. Basically, somebody from our family, my friend, turned into a roaming nomadic hobo, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the reality that I faced, because the successes that I had in the beginning were literally as simple as getting a piece of gear from a company because I couldn't afford it. Tent stakes, a shirt, shoes, which, by the way, I think cost like something like 47 cents to produce in China. So if you're not getting those from a company, I don't know what to tell you, man. They're practically,
Yeah.
free for them. But anyway, so when I did that, I was abandoned, right? And so that's not a position that you want to be in, because in the beginning, every single arrow, every single indicator, every single sign that I went past in this journey in the beginning said, turn back, you're gonna, danger ahead. And so this is where the story kind of starts to filter people out, because I'm telling you that if you dedicate yourself to your craft and your passion, patience is literally the only thing you need. Because the longer you spend hammering away at that, the more time you take this giant amorphous block of granite and you've got a tiny little chisel and you're working on it. After several years, people start asking you questions about what you're doing because you just have the answers.
Yeah.
I can tell you how to fit a backpack. I could tell you which hiking shoes are the best. I could tell you which way to get up, whatever mountains here on the East Coast and some mountains on the West Coast, which are the best trails, the most scenic ones. So that's how it starts. But then you're constantly doing these things, and these projects that I have that are, incredibly successful are not something that even had a defined end goal in the beginning. It was just like a couple guys from Iraq contacted me and said, hey, we just want to build a climbing program. That's it. We just want to be able to teach kids. Okay, well, now we have set the tallest climbing route in Iraq in history. We started the first volunteer mountain rescue team in the country. We built the first mountain shelter in the country. We translated the first climbing instruction manual in the country. We opened the first climbing store in Sulaymaniyah in the region. We built the first climbing wall in the region. We did so many things. I don't even like. They're not even. I don't even know.
So many firsts. Yeah, that's just
crazy.
Beautiful for a country that doesn't have anything like that. And at least I'm not that far into the outdoor community yet. I've done some 14ers here and there. I've gotten out into the mountains, but I just know from my own personal experience how much the outdoors can impact your mentality and like
Yeah.
kind of switch around like to a more positive state, and just being outside in nature is just a happy place. Like I know that we were talking about before, it's that place where you can kind of go and um, and offering that to people some in a place where most people wouldn't even think about or have a second thought about. Like most people just kind of brush it under the bus, and you're out there building something, putting up all these firsts in this country that a lot of people in a country that they don't care about, which is kind of crazy and just
Yeah.
an amazing thing. That's an amazing accomplishment. So
But when you follow a path that is traditional, right? Like, so let's
yeah,
say you become a lawyer or a doctor, all right? Um, when somebody asks you, what are you doing? You know what to say.
yeah,
Like if you're in your third year of law school, you can say, and they say, what's next for you? You can say, well, first I graduate, then I pass the bar exam, then I apply for work or start my own company. And in a couple of years, I got a bunch of clients. You could literally, that
yeah.
is what happens. But if you decide to create your own career and you don't know what it is, if somebody asks you, what are you doing? What am I doing?
Ah,
Hey, man, maybe you know more than me because it sounds like you might even know which direction to go. You just don't know.
yeah.
But that's the beauty of it because I didn't know where I was going to go. I wanted to be an ambassador for an American company and go climb some rocks in America and be able to make enough money so that I could put gas in my van, right?
So yeah, and so dialing it back just a little bit. So before you decided to make that move into the outdoor world, were you climbing and doing stuff before while you were lawyer still, or was that more of an after? Like, did you
That's
get
a good
into the outdoor stuff after the click, or was it before the click that the seeds were kind of planted, just you never really acted on them?
So that's a very good question because I don't want to sound like some sort of inaccessible like
Yeah.
entity, right? Like the one of my pet peeves in college was when you had speakers come in and they would talk to you. And they would be like, "Hey guys, I graduated magna cum laude at my school. I had straight A's, valedictorian. I was captain of the varsity, whatever team." And I'm just like, "Man, who are you? Like, I'm not anywhere near you. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to the two
Yeah.
people in this entire school that are going to maybe get close to that?" Like, no, no, I had no experience. I had gone skiing to like regular mountains on the East Coast, which anybody on the West Coast, if you skied on the East Coast, I apologize.
I grew up
Um,
skiing on the East Coast. I skied on a bump
right,
in
yeah. So you know
Indiana.
how to
That
ice
was
skate, right?
exactly.
Anyway, so while I was in law school, I was part of a group called Terramar Adventures. So I was an organizer for adventure around Philadelphia. So we would go and do things like horseback riding. We'd go rock climbing with guides, but to the extent that I had actual training, like practically zero. Uh, I maybe had gone camping 5 or 6 times in my life at that point. So in order for me to kind of get into this career, when I quit, that was really the first time, like I think 2012 probably actually was probably the first time I actually took it seriously that I needed to do something where I needed to become an expert. So the first thing that I did is I took a NOLS course, which is the National or Outdoor Leadership School.
Yes.
And I will tell you the reason I did that is because I knew that no matter what I do outdoors, no matter where I go, I need to have the fundamental skills to be able to navigate the outdoors and
Yep.
stay safe. And with the NOLS course, I became a certified wilderness EMT. Before anybody says, Milo, where'd you get all that money? What I'll tell you is that I was incredibly active in asking for it. So the first thing that I did when I quit, this is no lie, I wrote a personalized email to over 500 people in the outdoor industry, like easily over 500. Personalized email asking them for advice and an opportunity. And I can tell you right now that 497 of those came back as rejections and or unanswered. But 3 of those emails I still remember came through with some opportunities. And so I entered this entire thing without experience, without connections, and without money. And when I wrote to Knowles and I explained my situation and I explained my intentions and I explained my ambitions, I was lucky enough to receive one of their, I believe it was a scholarship or discount. So through the work that I demonstrated to them, I was able to get into one of their courses because I didn't have enough money. And afterwards, I was very active in the community. I actually gave a lecture at the Wilderness Risk Management Conference that they put on every year. I was selected as a distinguished alumnus. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I didn't have opportunity, guys. Like I didn't. It may seem that way because now I'm looking back and I'm talking about all this big game, but the reality is I went to my first outdoor retailer in 2015. Outdoor Retailer is I believe it's the largest outdoor sports show in the Eastern
Yeah.
Hemisphere. And I remember being there and I remember looking around and being like, man, there's like 1,000 other people over here that are like me. Just young people looking for a ambassadorship or some free gear just to get their career started. And I was like, I'm drowning because these people live in the Grand Tetons or near Yosemite or all this, and they actively have that lifestyle. I'm
Yeah.
some guy that's crawling out of an office unfit without any knowledge or even understanding of what's going on outdoors. But you know what happened? I came back the next year and there was less of those people. The people that I recognized. There was still 1,000 new people, right? But the people that came back that year, less of them. And then the next year I came back, way less. And now when I come back, the amount of people I met that first year that were the people there that were there the first time with me, I could literally count on one hand because patience rewards those people who exercise it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're Killian Jornet. It doesn't matter if you're, um, uh, any one of the bigger guys. I'm like all escaping my mind right now, right? But like, Alex Honnold, like it doesn't matter if you are an exceptionally talented athlete because those guys won the genetic lottery or whatever it is, or they're just so incredibly passionate that it does, like, you're not listening to this podcast. You're probably going out
Yeah.
there, you're kayaking in Yosemite or surfing big waves if that's what you're doing. What I'm talking about is people who do create careers in this industry. And the reality is the more time you spend, the more conversations you have, the more projects you bring to these people that are rejected, the more they actively see you pursuing this career path seriously. And I can tell you that there is a whole number of people in the industry who I am eternally grateful for their patience because they dealt with me. Eric Larson, thank you. You're awesome, man. Thanks for putting up with me. He was one of the first trips that I did for myself. I did polar expedition training with him in 2014.
That's awesome.
And him and Ryan Waters. And then I got the chance to meet Ryan Waters at his expedition camp at Mount Everest Base Camp, and I did a virtual reality tour of his camp, so that was cool. But the reality is the more you spend there, the more time you spend there, the more these people realize they're just not going to get rid of you.
Yeah.
And so, you get friendly with them a little bit and you start telling them about stuff that you're successful in. And like that time investment creates you. And just like what I said before, the more you exercise this, the more people recognize you as a person who may know a thing or two about what you're doing. The more years you pack on, the more these opportunities grow and you start to see things that you didn't see before because you know what to look for. You understand what sort of things brands are looking for. It's not just a pretty picture, it's the story behind it. It's the way that you do this. Are you on time? Are you, responsible? Are you effective in what you do? Do you make big promises and do you follow through? I have these incredible projects right now. I can tell you that I have not received more than $5,000 in sponsorship total ever. The total amount of sponsorship that I ever received is less than $5,000. And I have all of these incredible accomplishments under my belt because now I can say I am effective at following through on the things that I promise. And this is what people are interested in. And if they're not interested, doesn't matter because I figured out how to have a sustainable life without that type of investment. So that produces negotiating power because now I go up to companies and I say, hey, I'm doing this next major project. Do you want to be a part of it or do you not? And if they say, oh, we don't have the budget for this year, Milo, this isn't really what we're doing. You just say, thanks, no problem. I'm just going to go to the next guys because all the sponsors that I've worked with in my past are incredibly happy. And I started with nothing. But it doesn't mean that you should also undervalue what you bring into the outdoor industry either. So Mitch and I met through the Basecamp Outdoor Jobs and More
Yep,
Facebook group.
that's it.
I think there are several critically important conversations taking place on that platform right now. One of them is a person who is collecting statistics on the amount of money that people are paid, freelancers are paid in their positions in the outdoor industry, which means you can take a look at those numbers. And when you go up to somebody and say, hey, I'd love to work with you, and they say, hey, yeah, we can give you a jacket for that, you could be like, no, because other people are demonstrably getting more.
Yeah.
So you kind of figure it out. And of course, yes, the first few jobs you do have to be free, because these people can't take a risk on somebody they don't know with zero evidence that you're effective, right?
Exactly.
So you have to bring that you have to develop that on your own.
And I was going to rewind it, but if you want to keep going with this for a minute, you can go ahead. I was going to dial it back to your first was Knowles your first experience really in like the outdoor world community and actually getting out there and
Yeah.
having a big experience like that?
Yeah. So I chose the Knowles course that took place at their headquarters in Lander, Wyoming.
Lander, Wyoming. Yeah.
And Lander, Wyoming happens to be in an incredibly beautiful outdoor preservation area, or near, lots of outdoor stuff to do over there. The Wind River Range is out there. So if you guys get a chance, definitely visit. And but that was really the first authentic outdoor experience for me, where I was actually taught skills and let loose out there. And they were very serious about it, because the reality is, when you go outdoors, when you see these great videos and photos and everything, and even when you watch like Maru or Vertical Limit or all these things, you see these heroes, that they're like, they had a great time, and the danger isn't really something you can appreciate. But when I took the outdoor course at Knowles, the wilderness EMT training, they made it extremely clear that if you're like 2 miles down a trail and you twist your ankle, that puts you in a high risk situation. You may not be able to make it back to your car. You can catch hypothermia. You can crawl maybe a mile, but there's so many different things that can go wrong. And so for the first time, I began to appreciate how dangerous it is outside.
Yeah.
But that's the reality, right? Because if you take the view that I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a job, and if I get decent grades, I am now entitled to an income, and you take an entire generation and you feed that to them, what happens is you find yourself in the position that we are all in as a community right now, where we expect something based on our personal decisions. Meanwhile, somebody else who is in a significantly more powerful role takes the absence of your participation in society and takes advantage of that and takes everything for themselves. And you stop participating in the decisions that create your career, because you expect for other people to grant you those things. Well, I'll tell you right now, I don't walk around and ask for permission. I look for opportunities. And if there's an opportunity to create something, man, that is where the fire is. There's an opportunity to create a school for climbing in Iraq. Don't you want to be there? Looking back now, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I guess I totally expected for this to happen, sort of. But in the beginning, it's like me and a bunch of people I've never met. I can barely communicate with them online because English is a little, questionable. And we're going to create a climbing school. Have I ever participated in a climbing school? No. Do I know how to start? No. But I got a bunch of people who are ready for it. And something I learned from George Bosch, who is the founder of the Himalayan Stove Project, HimalayanStoveProject.org. Go check it out. 2017, they received the Citation of Merit from the Explorers Club dinner. George Bosch told me, and this is a common quote, but he's the one that told it to me. He said, every journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And so when I started this entire career in the outdoors, when I started the project in Iraq, when I started the project in Romania, when I started the project in New York with virtual reality, I had no idea how to get anywhere, but I could tell you what to do next. For virtual reality, first I got to get a camera. Then I got to start producing content. Then I got to learn how to process that content into videos at a time that literally this did not exist. right? I know the steps, the next step. And if anybody asks me, well, what's your long-term vision? The long-term vision is like, well, I mean, it's like a compass, right? Like
Yeah.
I know which direction to go in, but I don't know what to expect. And I don't know when the things are that we are going to achieve, when those are coming. And that's what I meant before. As a doctor, as a lawyer, as a engineer, if somebody asks you where do you expect to be in 2 years, you can say, I know exactly where I'm going to be in 2 years. My debt is going to be paid off this much. I'm going to be this much closer. I'm going to be earning this degree. I'm going to be earning this next certification. Perfect. What about you, Milo? What are you going to do? uh be alive, hopefully. Like, because some of this stuff I'm doing is dangerous, but really I don't know. Projects
Yeah.
are like a month at a time now. So like I'm talking about all of these successes, but there's way more failures.
Yeah.
There's a lot more ambitious projects that fell through the cracks, that didn't work out, where my partners stabbed me in the back, worked against me, like where I was fooled by snake oil salesmen. And as you progress, you learn who is reliable, who are the people who are, who help you out. And by participating in the community, you also become the community. You carry the culture in you. You're not an outlier. You're just part of this like amorphous blob of human beings who all come together one time a year and otherwise crawl into their respective holes that are really difficult to get to in the world, literally. So it's kind of crazy. But I mentioned the base camp group before,
Yeah.
and again, I want to underline how important it is for us to participate in conversation, because whether you believe it's society, whether you believe it's deliberate or not, our collective actions have resulted in a completely blind ability, like we're blind to like what the industry offers as far as jobs. We don't really understand. You can have somebody who's earning a ton in one part the area, but you have people who are doing the same stuff for free as a volunteer in a different area, and you don't know that. The
Yeah.
more we communicate as an industry, the more of a voice we have for what happens to our outdoors as well. And so I just wanted to thank Ali and Jenna during this broadcast for continuing this really difficult uh, venue, or for creating this platform for us to have these discussions, and for people like you and me to
Yeah.
connect as well.
And yeah, their platform's amazing. I mean, they do a great job moderating it too and keeping it sets just information in there and very, information centered. People can ask questions, jobs can be posted, and it's just I mean, it's a beautiful community that they've built, and it
Yeah,
continues to grow, which is amazing to watch. And I've only been a part of that group for less than a year now, so I joined it before I moved out here, but I'm in a very similar position as you, but like you 10 years ago, because I decided to quit my job that I got after college, that I had my degree for and everything. And I took a job in anything just to get out to Denver and be closer to the outdoor community and the outdoor world. And I've been out here for 4 months now. So, and just taking that first step. So I can relate to that. It wasn't any like crazy job, like a, you know, New York attorney or anything like that, but still I had a bunch of family who's like, what are you doing? So
yeah,
I can totally relate to the whole experience of just going against the grain of what people expect you to do. And after moving out here, since I've moved out here, it opens taking that leap of faith and putting yourself in a difficult position opens up you to going out of your comfort zone, and your comfort zone just keeps expanding, kind of like exponentially almost.
yeah,
So, and it's a beautiful thing, and people just need to realize that getting into the outdoor community, just getting into sports, even that, like you said, you were 29 when you decided to start going out and adventure. Like, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can still go out, try climbing for the first time, hike that 14er that you'd been not wanting to do, but like just putting off, and all of that. So, and just that first step is so important, and people just need to see that they can take it. And I think your story about how you went into it completely blind at the age of 29
yeah,
is a great kind of like reminder to people. Like, you don't need to know a ton to get into it. You can just everyone starts somewhere. So
I mean, I had, friends who had kids, and here
yeah,
I am starting on my path, right?
yeah,
And so you find yourself discouraged practically every step of the way, and you're thinking to yourself like, how much worse can it get, man? Like, how much worse can it get? I'm poor. I literally don't have a place to sleep tonight. There's nobody nearby that could even drive to me that I know, and I got to figure out what to do to get to tomorrow. Those are real situations that I encountered. These are above and beyond, hanging off a cliff and maybe having like a piece of protection fail,
yeah,
right? So you're not like, it's not that instant possible danger of death, but the slow simmering, destruction of your life that you're
yeah,
watching before you as you're investing every single effort into something incredibly risky. So, I don't want to sound distant from your
yeah,
audience. I want to say to them, we are this generation that is dealing with the way that society has transformed, and it is entirely up to us to shape what's going on.
yeah,
And that means that if you're doing something that's shaking things up, you are the person changing the norm, the status quo. You are. And if people resist, and they do that by standing in your way or actively working against you or disagreeing or discouraging you, I think what you're doing is you're creating your vision, and they're saying, wait, no, we don't want change. And it's like, you don't want change. Why are you complaining to me every single day about your crappy boss, about how you work too much, how you're not recognized, how you don't get enough value for these things?
yeah,
How close are each one of us to complete bankruptcy? I think that coronavirus kind of revealed that, because now we have significant problems across the United States. And then you're looking at people, so where would you have invested your time, right? In a job, like Jim Carrey said this, right? You can work your entire life towards a career and then have it fail. And if you don't love what you did, it means not, you just wasted your entire life.
yep,
Or you could work towards something that you're passionate about and that you absolutely love. And if you fail, you still participated in that thing you love at a
yep,
level that's, just the beginning, but you put that time in. And now that I look at like the opportunities that have opened up, the families, the communities that are like families that I've created around the planet, I feel like there's purpose in my life. I feel like there's a reason for me to for me to wake up.
yeah,
And I don't get paid in money. Let me just be very clear, everybody. You don't earn money with a nonprofit, right? But you have a purpose and you live experiences and you have a family and you have people and you have an opportunity to speak like I do. And by improving the world, by providing opportunities to people who would otherwise not have them, you're making the world a better place. And so whatever your vision of what the meaning of life is, there's a purpose that you discover by doing these things. And that purpose drives you in a way that money never could.
yeah,
And it's an incredible transformation that has taken place in my philosophy behind life. Because if I was earning tons of money right now as an attorney somewhere, I would be looking forward to that tiny opportunity to actually go and climb and pay for a guide to take me somewhere. But now I'm literally living that. So what good is
yeah,
money? Why don't we just take that out of the picture? And if there's Milo, money, and my goal, if I take that money out, bam, I am literally living the life that I want to live. And that just means that, and what I tell people is like, this wasn't something that like, I said to you, I wanted to be an explorer ever since I was a
yeah,
kid, but the picture's not so clear when you get started,
yeah,
right? It wasn't like, I want to be, Indiana Jones. Here's my hat. It's my kangaroo leather hat. It's like, I want to be Indiana Jones, right?
yeah,
No, that's not how it works. The reality was I didn't know what I wanted to do. I
yeah,
literally didn't. And so I started looking for it. All I knew was that I wanted to discover things. That's it. Nature was really easy to get to because there's no entry fee
yeah,
to nature if you hike in. If you have your tent and your stove and some food with you, you're good to go, man. Just purify some water. Um, I did not know. I had failed at so many things. I was an artist, an attorney, a mathematician, an economist, an event producer. I was a video producer, photographer, like all these things, all of them. Web designer, like everything. Art, writer, like all these things. And like each one I did until I reached a point where I'm just like, nah, I really can't do this for free. You know, I had my
Yeah.
own expedition company that I started in 2011 called EXP Adventures. At first, it was just an expedition company for everybody. And then I transferred over into private clients, designing their trips, their ideal trips, their dream trips. And I realized I really didn't want to be babysitting people who really didn't know what they were doing either. And then ultimately, I kind of whittled it down and whittled it down and whittled it down. And now I have this focus of producing humanitarian programs in remote locations around the world for communities that need them, for marginalized communities. That's literally it,
Yeah.
creating opportunities for them. And I couldn't get to here without all the wrong turns, the mistakes, the bad decisions. I couldn't get here, you know, if I had not done that. So I don't want to give this impression that I like got out of the starting gate and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It was like, no, I spent a significant amount of time and effort searching for what it was that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And only through that process was I able to get to where I am today. So if you're looking at this or you're listening to this podcast and you're saying to yourself, man, I'm not like Milo, it's like, I think you're probably better than me in a lot of things. I just figured out that I am incredibly stubborn and I don't give up. And that's sometimes a problem. And I've learned my lesson many times, but at the same time, it's brought me to here. And so if you are stubborn and patient, ultimately you are going to be the person that's going to define the community that you are entering, because all the old guys and the old women are all going to pass to a better place, and the people that are left are going to be the people that participated from a long time ago, and that's you.
Yeah, and that's a good way to think about it. I never even thought about that. Is like if you're in a community, if you end up dropping out, you're out of the community then. Where if you stick around at some point, you're going to be one of the, you know, the people that people look up to and ask questions because you're the one that's been there. You're the one that's been around. They see your
Yeah.
face around, and you become that person that you're looking up to at the beginning. Like, oh, I could never get to where they're at. And then you become that person by staying in and just being persistent, like you said, which is
Yeah.
a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
So back to the Knowles course. So after that, where did you kind of go from there? Because you got your Knowles
I mean,
course.
that's yeah. So that's when I started the expedition company.
Gotcha.
And the Knowles course was necessary because if I'm going to be trekking out with anybody else out into the wilderness, you know, I don't want to be dependent on anybody else for rescue or for
Yeah.
medical assistance at all. At least I need to understand it, how to do it, how to perform it, how to identify potential problems. Um, so I had that for a couple of years, and of course that includes, you know, event production to promote it, building the website, creating marketing campaigns, flying, like literally traveling around the world as much as I could in order to get experience, and that was not paid. What I did is I started to look for volunteer opportunities. There is so many of them. My God. Okay, if you believe that there's no opportunities out there for volunteers, you're blind and inexperienced. You can literally look like, okay, let's do it this way. Would you like to go to Hawaii and to go see some volcanoes? Would you like to go to Costa Rica and go to a yoga retreat, or Bali? Would you like to go Australia and go surfing? Right? What you can do is you can go online and you can look up surfing retreats or tourist destinations or whatever in those locations, and you just send them an email and you say, hey, I'd love to volunteer at your location for free. I'll work for free. All you have to do is give me housing and food, and I will work for free. And guess what? The entire world will open to you. Maybe a couple places will say no, but man, who's going to turn down a volunteer to come over and to work for free for them? Most of these places have extra rooms anyway, and the amount of food that they produce, they throw out anyway. So to them, you're effectively, you know, free labor.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my start. I ended up going to the Yukon Territory and being a dog handler. at one of the largest kennels in the entire territory. I worked with 158 dogs. I went into Costa Rica. Like I said, Costa Rica is one of those locations where you could volunteer as well. And there was a whole number of these things. You don't get paid, right? So every single time your parents call, you're going to disappoint them. You're not going to be able to go out on dates and, get dinner with girls or anything like that. But what you are going to do is you're going to start, chipping away at that rock that is your future career. And it's the only way to do it. And you're just not, especially in today's environment, you're just not going to find a paid position. If you do, man, congratulate yourself. I had, as a writer, what I discovered is I couldn't afford gear, but if I reviewed it, I would be provided that gear for free. So I started working for several different publications online and receiving gear for free. Eventually, I started making $15 per article, which is woefully underpaid, by the way. And, in order to be a writer, you have to stick with it for a very long time. You have to like writing. But you also have to realize influencing, becoming a social media influencer is highly unlikely to happen. The reason I say that is because companies literally hire people whose only job and only responsibility is to build social media campaigns and create marketing campaigns. So if you're trying to build your career and have that as on the side promoting yourself, you're fooling yourself. And you can hear this from regular influencers and everything. This is my opinion. So if I'm offending anybody, please, send me an email. Let's talk. But the reality is, you have people whose entire job is to do just that, and they have resources to do it. You don't. So that ship has sailed. Like we're past the .com bubble, we're past all that stuff. Now it's just figuring out how to do these things. And what I can tell you right now is that a genuine person who is competent is and reliable is such a rare thing in the outdoor industry, because we're just a bunch of hard-headed jocks who have their own idea of what reality is, also hippies or whatever you want to call us. But we are, free-spirited people who really are nomadic at this point. So if you demonstrate competency and reliability, man, you are going to have doors open for you real quick. But you also have to tolerate a bunch of nonsense, a lot of bull. So, it hardens people over time.
Yeah.
But getting back to, the entire process, I don't want to go down my entire timeline because it just be, going through
Huge.
all of it. What I do want to say is that every single next step may feel like a catastrophe in the beginning, but what's actually happening is it's life pushing you to the next step. It's saying, you've exhausted your time here. Now it's time for you to start growing over here. And the question becomes, how rapidly can you set up a network? How rapidly can you identify resources? And how can you put those two to work so that you can accomplish the goal that you came to this location to accomplish, whatever that is? And it's very easy to be distracted. So you really have to, ask yourself, what do I want to do? And maybe put that up on your mirror so that every day in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, you can see it and you can ask yourself, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay here or do I want to go somewhere else? And the more you practice that, the more you're going to get to the negotiation. And when somebody says, this is all that we can offer you, you can go, well, that's great. That's not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go look for it elsewhere. And you can understand that you are not in a critical place with your resources where you're going to die literally. No, you can live a sustainable life, whatever sustainability means to you at that point. If it's just having a place to sleep at night, I've been there. The reality is, how do you put yourself in a place where your negotiating power is your feet? And if somebody's saying, we can't offer any money, and you're at the point in your life where that's what you're looking for, well, guess what? There are billions people out there who are only going to be able to offer you nothing except not money. So you can walk away from those guys. There's plenty of people looking for money, but it's harder to find. But it's there because you could be reliable and dependable. And that's really all it takes. Stick around, patience.
Yeah. Um, switching gears a little bit, was there a certain experience during all of this that has impacted you the most and made you realize like, hey, this is definitely the path that I I want to be on, and like kind of stuck with you?
Um, well, uh, I mean, probably once a year that happens, at least at a
Yeah.
minimum. Because I mean, here's the thing. Recently, last year, I needed to collect funds in order to get this school started in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a bunch of people, and I was proposing, what we are gonna do. And I had a guy who was just like, "All right, Milo, let's have some real talk here. All right, I want to give you money, okay, but I need to know that that money is gonna go to the right place. So let me ask you two questions. Let's just be real. You got to answer them for yourself. First question: have you ever met the people to whom you're going to give my money?" And I was like, "No, I've never been to Iraq." And he's just like, "Okay, that's an important question to answer." Second question: have you been there? Do you know where they're building the school, what they're doing, who the people around them are? And I was like, "No, I don't." And he's just like, "So you expect me to give you tons of money and you don't know who you're giving it to or where it's going?" And I was just like, "No." And he's just like, "Why would I give you money?" And he's right. He's absolutely right. And so that suddenly the decision came to be right in front of me. I had to fly to Iraq. That was not an easy thing to do because, first of all, I was paying to go there. Second of all, I was going to visit people I've never met in a country that we had been at a war with for a very long time. It's a complicated view that people have of Americans over there, especially people who are going on their own for the first time without ever having been there, without military experience. And so I was faced with this dawning reality of, okay, Adventure Milo. I created this brand. I got the website. I got the logo. I put it on everything. What does it mean? Like, what do I want to be, right? So do I want to be an influencer? Do I want to be like, am I a lie? Do I want to just fly to Bali, hang out on the beach, get my camera equipment? Where's my camera? It's not over here.
Yeah.
And try to take the best photos to compete with those professional photographers who hire models? Do I want to do that and just kind of like hang out and try to get as many followers as possible? Or do I want to fly into an actually dangerous situation with no support to start a project that no brand is interested in touching with a 10-foot pole, but I stand to chance creating opportunities for thousands, if not millions of people that I will never meet in my life to actually create change in the
Yeah.
world? I was faced with that decision because I was either going to fly to Iraq or I was going to go to some tropical place like Ibiza or like Hawaii or somewhere else and just try to jam myself in with everybody else. And that was a very important decision to make because my life was actually threatened. You know, I'm careful saying that now that I know
Yeah.
Iraq much better, and now that I have a
Yeah.
community of people who love me over there. I don't want to say like you're flying into hell, but in the beginning, the propaganda and all of the experience and exposure I had to Iraq at all had indicated to me that this was practically flying into a volcano, with a helicopter with the
Yeah.
intention of just crashing. And so, that was a very important decision I had to make. Am I the real thing? Am I just living some sort of like, lie, or do I actually want to do this? And, you can see the decision that I made because I didn't receive any support. I posted on multiple climbing groups and I said, "Hey guys, we're collecting gear for my school in Iraq and we need new gear." And so many people said, "You are stupid. Who's going to give you new gear? What? Ask for used gear." Right? And I'm just like, really? Well, am I going to get used climb? Now, I'm not a climbing expert. I consider myself to be a novice climber. I can't even tell if a gear is adequate for, being used. I can't tell if a rope is good enough or not, like after use. You give me a rope, I'll look at it, I'll be like, yeah, that's a rope. That's as much as I know. So now what would happen if I created a school and we've got a child hanging off of a rope and one of the pieces of protection fails, the rope swings out and snaps, right? Now we have an international incident where the most positive intentions, the most goodwill just flowed into an incident that paints us as an enemy, bringing inadequate gear into a country and causing the death of a child in that country. I
Yeah.
didn't have a choice. I had to get new gear. And so I was like, you know what? I don't care, man. This isn't your project. If you don't believe you can do this, too bad. And so, you know, these types of decisions came all the time. I drove from Poland through Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Serbia, actually Serbia, then Bulgaria, into Turkey. I drove through the conflict, through the war that is actively taking place on the border of Syria and Turkey. And I drove into Iraq in order to deliver nearly $10,000 worth of donations that I personally collected from all across Europe because there was no other way for me to get there. I literally drove through a fucking war. And
That's
when I was
awesome,
in
though.
Iraq and I finally reached my destination on January 4th this year, 2020, the United States dropped bombs on Baghdad and killed the Iranian top general, Qasem Soleimani. When I was in the country alone with my 19-year-old car, hold on a second, my battery might be dying here.
You're good.
Actually, let me plug this in.
Yeah. Take your time.
Otherwise, we're going to disappear. So America bombed Iraq and killed the top general in Iran. And I was in the country alone, effectively. And I needed to escape with my life.
It's crazy.
So when I found out about that, I actually got it recorded. So if you guys should watch the documentary I'm producing right now, please support it. The money is going to the documentary, which is publicizing the school, and we are doing incredibly effective things. But I literally had to escape with my life, with human beings who were hunting me. Iranians and Iranian sympathizers immediately started to corral up Americans. And you probably didn't hear about this, didn't really make it to the media, that Americans were in specific danger. Every single humanitarian organization that we reached out to in Iraq immediately sent out an email to all of its international volunteers and workers and employees that said, do not leave your residence. Meanwhile, I had to drive almost 7 hours to the border. I was escorted by a couple of the guys. You know, I'm really grateful for that. I feel blessed that they were willing to drop everything they're doing and escort me to the border instantly. By the way, on the way, literally my wheel broke off of my car because the roads are bad over there. And then I had to drive the next 7 days nonstop through the war zone in Turkey again and back over to the safer European Union countries. That's what happened, you know. And that when I was driving home, I really felt like the Grim Reaper was sitting in the back of my car. And the further I went, the more I just became crazy and grateful that I was alive, grateful for these experiences. But one thing suddenly dawned on me. That childhood dream, that idea that I held when I was like 5, 7, whatever it was, of wanting to be Luke Skywalker, Indiana Jones, or whatever, any one of these guys, suddenly I had a purpose traveling through an area as one of the only people who have ever done this that wasn't from that country, driving through Western Turkey, or Eastern Turkey rather. And I was there with a purpose to help people. I was literally living out my childhood fantasy as an explorer. Even though I was pissing my pants with fear, I suddenly realized this is exactly what I wanted to do. And a peace came over me. And I said, yes, this is what I want to do. This is who I've trained myself for. This is the vision that I had, and I'm enacting it right now. And so here I am. I'm not afraid anymore. And the reality is when I came home and when everything happened after January 24th, when we opened our doors for the first time and then Corona hit and we had to start making video lessons and I started to have incredibly accomplished volunteer athletes from around the world want to participate and to teach for me, that's when it suddenly dawned on me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got to realize I had PTSD at the time. I couldn't sleep. I was a nervous wreck. Anxiety was eating me alive. And I was sitting there up at night, probably 3 a.m. in the dark alone, and I had realized that I had accomplished something that by all standards was literally impossible. I had become the first person to reach the Mariana Trench, to climb Mount Everest, to reach the moon. In my own way, I had taken an idea that was absolutely impossible, given my resources, given my connections, given my experience, and it came to fruition. We had opened doors. And so you're asking about like, this crazy moment of epiphany. Here it was. I had literally demonstrated to myself that I could do anything. Anything. I can achieve the impossible. And that realization shattered my worldview because I recognize now that whatever projects I had now that I will be putting on my plate would come to fruition. I wasn't afraid of failure anymore. I had absolute certainty and confidence that what I was going to do, I would figure out. And my life is now transformed completely. We're having this interview right now, but the depth with which I speak, the types of experiences and wisdom that I've gained, not having resources and being able to accomplish these things, it's laughable, the type of excuses people give me now. Oh, well, I've got a job. Oh, I've got student
Yeah.
loans. Oh, well, we're going to have a baby. Oh, we've got a mortgage. And it's just like, really? I've met quadriplegics that climb 14ers.
Yeah.
I know people who are blind who've ascended the top of Mount Everest. I have friends who have multiple children who are actively exploring nature. And you're telling me that you've got some debt and you can't do this? This is just not for you.
Yeah. So if somebody would have asked you 10 or told you 10 years ago that like, I'm from the future, I'm coming back to tell you that in 10 years, you're going to be driving through a war zone to set up a climbing school in Iraq, what would you have said to them?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. It's it's one of these things that you don't, I told you before that I didn't have the capacity to imagine what was possible because I was constrained to that small
Yeah.
box of the world that I was used to with a bunch of people telling me what to do and what was possible and what wasn't. And I felt like they had the experience and the wisdom to tell me the truth. But in reality, we're all just grown-up children playing by our own rules. So if you define those rules and if you keep breaking them, you keep figuring them out, you're eventually going to get to a place that nobody else has been.
Yeah.
But if you play by those rules, you just get put into a box.
Yeah.
So, are you
Once
somebody who is brave enough to do something you haven't done before?
think outside the box and just go be your own
Yeah.
person and be happy, which I feel like a lot of people, like you said, settle, kind of settle, you have this life where it's comfortable, but you're not doing the thing that you love. Like you have your bills paid, you have all this other stuff, but that childhood dream, I feel like people stop dreaming once they hit a certain age
Oh
almost.
yeah.
And it's like
Absolutely.
you had that dream as a kid, like you said, and at a certain point, that dream becomes just a dream. Like you don't actively pursue it anymore. You're like, yeah, it would be awesome, but I'm comfortable now. I have my bills paid. I can't go chase after that. I can't go do this because I have XYZ now. I
Yeah.
feel like that's such a mindset that a lot of people get sucked into that it's hard to break. It is hard to break because comfortability, comfort is, it's comfortable, even if it's not happy, you're at a place where you don't want to go out your comfort zone because you're afraid of getting hurt or
Yeah. Well,
failing or anything like that.
I mean, one of the things that I do want to divulge here, I want to make, I gotta express my vulnerability to you
Yeah.
because, there's times I've had breakdowns, catastrophes have happened, personally, you know, personal breakdowns where like I felt like I've reached my limits, I've reached the end, completely broken back down and battered, you know, zero money, zero things to show for all the effort that I put in. Somebody stole everything I had. And the problem is, I still woke up the next day. So I had another 24 hours to do something else. And if you keep wallowing in self-pity, you know, you're just extinguishing your own flame. And I know it's hard to get up and to move. And I know it's hard, right? But nobody's going to be there to help you. Nobody's going to come and lift you up. You've got your 2 feet, so take the next step. And you know which direction it is to go to safety. And if you don't, take it anyway, because worst case scenario, you're just going to backtrack, but you're going to know where not to go. You know, so I don't want you to think that Milo's had this incredible life of opportunity, because I haven't. There is a destructive, like just trail of destruction behind me. I just haven't stopped moving. And now I know which direction to move in with confidence and how to value my experience, because I have accomplishments I could show for it. And if somebody doesn't believe me, tough, you know, because I don't tell you that I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
I can show you that I'm good.
Yeah. You went out and you made a climbing school in a place where if you told anyone 10 years ago, they'd be like, what are you talking about a climbing school in Iraq for?
Let me pose you a suggestion. How about we go to North Korea and start a basketball school? How crazy does that sound?
Sounds just
that sounds
as crazy.
Absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's what this idea sounded like when we started it. The difference was I had a bunch of people in Iraq, or just a group of people, like 5 people in Iraq, who said, we absolutely want this. And if you give us any resources, we will immediately put them to work towards that goal. So all I did was just got whatever I could and I gave it to them. And that collaboration, it just worked, man. It sparked the fire.
Then I know you're not the guys that are there in Iraq, but I mean, I'm sure that you can kind of gather kind of like their mentality and like who they are.
Oh God.
As like outdoor people, if you want to just talk about them for a minute and kind of shout out them and talk about that, because I think that's deserved on their part too.
I got to be honest, you know, I can't take the credit for this entire project. I'm the guy that's operating outside of Iraq, right? But these guys are the guys that are operating within the constraints of an economic island. Practically every country in the world has placed sanctions, so you can't send products or produce services that Iraqis purchase. Mm-hmm. So they just have whatever resources they came up with as a country, and there's a wall between them and everybody else. These guys have zero exposure to the outdoor world except for through some internet that kind of works through that's not in their language. So they see pretty photos and videos. And these are the guys who are the first generation. There is no generation before them that had went and explored, because they're dead.
Yeah.
Because there was conflict there for over a century. And so these are literally the explorers. They are it's like a sample. It's like this, you know, vacuum, this petri dish, and they are the first people exploring. And this past month, just within the past month, we have rediscovered a lost canyon. We set a new route to one of the most popular mountains, as well as another route, you know, and we have now discovered a series of new things in caves that were only discovered, I think, 5 months ago by a German team that went in there. And there's nobody else exploring caves in the country. We're working with the head of the water keepers for the country as well, Nabil Musa. And we are exploring how to do river sports, as well as you know, diving and things like that. So this school, the scope of it has grown significantly, not through my actions, but because these guys are going out there with no experience except for what they taught themselves, and they're entering areas where, by the way, there's mines, explosives. So on the Iranian border, there's literally millions of mines The first time that I went climbing with them, we found a mortar shell and a bunch of bullets, an exploded mortar shell. So if you're going hiking in Iraq and you're going on a trail that nobody's hiked before, you can step on a mine, right? So this team of people is right now exploring the lost parts of Iraq. These guys are insane. They are so passionate. They have regular jobs, families, a cultural expectation to do things, and they also are busy with their lives just like every single one of us, paying the bills, learning, figuring out what they're going to do today. They have things that they got to do for people like family or friends. They have wives, children, you know, they have debts, they have no opportunity. And yet they find through passion this burning desire that will not let them stay home, but they throw themselves out into this incredibly dangerous, undiscovered terrain.
I
You
feel
know,
like that's
it's hard to summarize how I feel like I'm in the
yeah.
presence of greatness when I'm around them. And they're like, Milo, without you we couldn't do this. And I'm just like, no, without you you couldn't have this, man. I'm just like this cheerleader on the side
Yeah.
that's like publicizing this. But you
Yeah.
know, I feel like everybody in the group feels that way.
I feel like that's that childhood kind of like uh that want to explore, and they're just freely showing it and actively listening to that childhood voice in your head to, hey, go climb that rock, go paddle down that river, go, do something, climb a tree in the woods,
Yeah.
go explore. It's that I think everyone has that as a kid. And like I said, a lot of people lose that sense of adventure, that sense of awe and wonder. And unless you've actually gone out and been somewhere where not many people have been, or just out in the middle of the wilderness, it's kind of hard to describe that feeling of just being in awe of nature
But you
and
know,
that
it's
sense
not,
of adventure.
you know, I do want to mention though that this, you know, this isn't all sunshine and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
We had the founder of the team, probably one of the first 5 people who started climbing in Iraq. His name was Hauraz Raza. And on September 9th, 2019, he was the first casualty of climbing in Iraq. And we experienced the moment where everything could turn upside down.
Yeah.
Because in the culture of the country, you have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to realize these are people where for several generations, the only place they could survive, not live, but survive, barely get enough food and shelter, was in the villages within their community. So this is the first generation of people who are saying, I would like to walk in that direction for 3 days. I will sleep on the ground. We'll go up mountains and cross streams and stuff, and then we'll come back. And so the people who are in the villages, they're like, why? What? You're crazy. Why would you
Yeah.
like to go in that direction? What's over there? And they're like, nothing. Nothing's over there. We're just going to walk out over there. Right? So we have a culture that is completely inexperienced to why the outdoors even matters. And suddenly this sport that they don't understand called mountaineering has produced its first casualty. And so the entire country suddenly is at a fork in the road. Do we reject this crazy sport that doesn't bring any value that I understand because someone has died? Or do we just let these people continue to do this and have our children participate in a sport that kills? Right? And so we were at a very, very dangerous juncture in the development of the sport in the country. And I was fortunate in having interviewed Hauraz, who had become a good friend of mine, several times. I recorded my interactions with them, obviously, because we're producing a documentary about this so that everybody that's listening
Yeah.
here can share. And I'd love for you to link the video. So I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
But I produced a video where I used interviews with Hauraz and I used his own words to describe the passion with which he pursued outdoor recreation, outdoor sports, mountaineering, climbing. And his words where he talked about recognizing the risks, recognizing the passion that would make it impossible for us to stop people from going into the outdoors, and recognizing that there was an absolute necessity for a program that taught people how to responsibly go outdoors, how to be responsible and safe. His words, the person that died, saying, I don't have the right equipment, I don't have the right experience, and I might die. But if I die, I hope that it is because I am developing this dream so that others can climb safely after me.
Yeah.
And, I can't say that whether it was that video or the collective actions of all of us, but climbing is more popular than ever. We have 50% women in our classes. We have a female instructor as one of our 4 instructors, Haojing Salih, who is the first Middle Eastern woman to summit Lenin Peak. And she has something else planned for the next month that I don't want to talk about because I don't want to spoil it for her yet. But we have created an environment where women can achieve equally to men, which is unprecedented in the country as well. I'm not going to talk about that yet because we're still developing what's going on over there and observing what sort of things are going on. We don't want to create any dangerous situations for anybody. But I do want to say that the outdoor sports in Iraq are creating a very, very unique environment.
Yeah.
And we are the ones that are heading this. So I do want to say that, this is real. This isn't some sort of, I'm not trying to glamorize this. I'm not trying to say like, oh man, outdoor sports is radical and sometimes people die. It's like, no, this is real. It has consequences. If you don't do this correctly, you're going to get hurt. You're going to injure people in your life. You're going to change drastically the way that your family and your friends, lives are through the actions that you're doing. On the other hand, we can't stop ourselves. We can't stop people from going outdoors. That's where freedom lies. That's where we don't have rules.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a debate between the eagle and the bear.
No.
One is going to eat the other one. That's how they live. And the rules in nature. There is no rules. You can't put rules in there. So that's where we're going to look in order to find, a voice inside of us when we listen to that. So that's what you're saying about going out into nature and really appreciating it. We evolved in nature.
Yeah.
So these strange constructs, the ability to speak to you through a flat piece of plastic that shows glowing lights and produces sounds, the fact that I have shelter and running water and electricity is really a completely novel concept that we have not evolved to at all.
Yeah.
But if you go outdoors and nature calling, that's just home.
Yeah.
So teach yourself some basic skills and start enjoying it.
Yeah.
Get out there.
Nature's one of those things, and that risk aspect is something that you always have to talk about, especially with adventure sports. I mean, that risk of death. I mean, from the outside, some people look at it as the whole, oh my God, radical, like they're crazy and they just accept it. It's like, you don't exactly accept it, but you accept the fact that it's Mother Nature and, anything can happen. And people inside the community, I mean, if you're in there long enough, you're going to know somebody that's died climbing or died in some way doing something. It's just a part of being a part of the outdoor community. I feel like it's a sad aspect, but and then mountaineering also, I mean, it's just a part. It's a part that you have to accept.
Unfortunate consequence.
Yeah. And people that don't understand it it's hard to describe unless you've actually been out in that type 2 fun where you're out there just miserable to understand why people do it, because some people just don't understand why people would put themselves through hell.
Let me tell you, man, after you have been, hauling gear up a mountain for several days in a row, when you discover a hot spring, you understand comfort and pleasure in a way that you could not possibly understand it if you're working a 9 to 5. You just can't.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. And so, I mean, everybody could say that about what they do, right? But and I don't want to say that I'm some sort of authority on this, but what I do speak from is experience.
Yeah.
And I know how to give it my all and have life slap me right back in the face and just say, too bad, not today. Over and over. How many years has it taken? And you know what? I can't say I'm successful yet. I can say I did something cool, but we're still working on it.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys get a chance. adventuremilo.com/Iraq. Check out the information about the project. You can see all the other projects on my website as well. Please consider making a donation. The only reason the school is running right now is because of donations that we received from
Yeah.
across the world, including Patagonia and Adidas, who really needed to have their arms twisted in order to make that happen. But if you are a climber, consider that these people do not have access to climbing gear, climbing training, or anything else, and we are the first people providing it. With your donation, we can really make a difference in changing the entire culture of an entire country.
Yeah.
Deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And is there anything else that you want to end with? Anything else that you want to talk about just to kind of close out? Or is that about it?
I mean, if anybody's got questions, I encourage you to reach out. You can find me on social media, Adventure Milo, all of them, Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
Twitter. Send me an email, visit the website, make a donation, even $5, man. I mean, that makes a huge
Yeah.
difference. We've had
Sounds
big
good.
donations, small donations, but it's the participation and the betterment of mankind all over the world, no matter where it is. Makes a huge difference.
Awesome. Well, it was great to hear your story. Very happy to have you on. I'm sure I'll be in touch with everything. So thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Right on.
And that's the end of the episode. I will see
All right.
everyone else later on the next episode.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, like, subscribe, review, and share this episode with your friends. Thank you very much for tuning in again, and I will look forward to talking to you guys next time on the next episode. Thank you and have a great day.